Oh yeah, it's OTT. Yeah, you know me. Oh yeah, it's OTT. Yeah, you know me. That's why I don't rap. That's why I make music. So for this episode of the free VST Plugin Detective, where essentially I test out, try out, demonstrate, and fool around with basically all these different free VSTs and free plugins, I'm going to look at, demonstrate, and show you arguably the most free plugin out there, the most popular one. This is actually, at least I just checked on Splice plugins. If you go to splice.com, it should be part of Splice anyway. Splice is a great platform. On their free plugins page, their #1 ranked one in terms of popularity is Xfer Records OTT. Now this is made by Steve Duda, who I heard get called, and I actually like this, called the Elon Musk of EDM. He's obviously made OTT and released it completely for free. He's the one who's behind Serum. He arguably kind of single-handedly made it himself. I actually got to talk to him at a music technology event that I went to one time, and super smart guy, as you can imagine. And so the OTT essentially is a multiband compressor that's designed to simulate Ableton's OTT. Now OTT stands for over the top. So I'm going to show you, if you have Ableton, obviously you're probably used to this, but if you go to multiband dynamics, click that button, you're going to see these presets. I have OTT right here, and bam. So essentially Steve Duda made this so that if, let's say, you have FL Studio, if you have Logic, if you have, I don't know, GarageBand, whatever you use to make music, you can still use the OTT. Now, for these kind of videos, when I do the FRECCERO, I do a lot of different things. When I do the free VST Plugin Detective, I usually do a blend of a tutorial and a review. Now, for the OTT, I'm not going to go too much into the tutorial aspect, just because there is a lot going on here, as you can probably tell. There's a lot going on, but I'm going to kind of make this as simple as possible. So when it comes to compression, essentially what a compressor does, and this is what most of us are used to, is it kind of stops sound at a certain threshold. So I'm more this as simple as I can, because as you can imagine, there's a lot of technicalities that go into it in terms of the algorithmic aspects of how intense it pushes it down. The best way I like to think of it is, if you think of a music, when you listen to music, you see the music going up and down, like bum, ba-da-bum, bum, bum, ba-dum, bum, bum. So a compressor is kind of like a hand stopping it, and how intense the hand pushes it down, the time of, because let's say the music goes bump, and it goes up a little bit, and then goes back down, or does it go boom, and it's straight like brick wall compressor, or limiter basically, which is a compressor, essentially a very extreme compressor, so on and so forth. So that's what a compressor does. It basically just stops the sound going to a certain threshold. Now, a multiband compressor does that, but on 3 different bandwidths. So, you have, as you can see here on the OTT, you have the high, the mid, and the low. So let's say you have a really good sound, but you're like, you know what? I really, really like this sound, but the problem is that high end is too sharp, right? So what you can do is you can use something like a multiband compressor. Now, as you can look at the Ableton one, as you can see here, the idea is that it kind of normalizes everything as best it can. That's for me what I use OTT for a lot. Now, as you notice, it says multiband upwards and downwards compressor. Now, a downwards compressor is commonly referred to as a compressor, right? It kind of stops the sound going to a certain threshold. However, an upwards compressor does the opposite. If, let's say, it's below a certain threshold, it kind of pushes it up. So look at it as a simultaneous downwards and upwards, and obviously that's what we have right here. And that just allows it to be very, very even. This is used commonly in bass music and dubstep, but even still, if you're not making like heavy bass, heavy electronic music, it's still something that is super big and versatile. And like I said on all these videos, it's free. So you really cannot go wrong, especially like I said, with Steve Duda making this. You know it's good. I actually prefer Xfer Records OTT to the multiband compressor OTT preset in Ableton. You could argue that they're technically the same thing. I just think that the GUI, or the graphical user interface, or this layout, is a lot more intuitive, in my opinion, than the Ableton one. Now, granted, you could argue that they're basically the same thing, but for me, I just like this better. This to me, it works. So, you have obviously going into here, you obviously have depth. Depth is kind of like the dry, wet knob of this entire thing like the volume knob of how much is affecting what's going on. Jumping back down here, you have the upwards and downwards compression, how much of each one's happening. You have the time. You have obviously the input in terms of the in gain of the sound coming in, the output of the out gain going out. Now you have these. Now, as you can see, you have a kind of a horrible color, like a weird brownish color. Then you have some black, and then you have some green. Now, basically, this one, the the one on the left, these brown ones, are going to be the upwards compressors. Essentially what that's doing is boosting the volume up. So what you're saying when you move this, and I'm just going to move this like so, what I'm saying is, okay, OTT, when this sound is too low, just push it up a little bit. Then with the green one, when a sound is too high, I say, okay, OTT, when the sound is above here, above this threshold, push it down. So you're simultaneously pushing the high, the mid, and the lows up and down to kind of keep it very normalized. Now there's a bunch of different uses, a bunch of different applications for this. You can use it on your master chain, which is very common. You can use it with your bass. You can use it with your synths. I mean, the possibilities are literally endless with this. So I'm going to give you an example. This is actually a remix, technically I guess a bootleg, I did of, I can't remember who actually was in this track. It was Count on Me by Bijou and a couple other talented artists. I should have put them here. But anyway, I have a link this below if you want to check it out. And so I decided to use it on the drop, as you can see with the drop. And in all these videos, I like to show you basically an example of how I use these different VSTs in my own productions. So I'm going to go here, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you basically how the drop sounds, okay? So it's going to sound like this. And I'm not going to play the whole song, just especially in terms of copyright issues. But I'm just going to play the drop, so as you can see here. So that's basically how it sounds. So the thing is, with these two instruments, you're almost kind of doing call and response, right? Kind of soloing them. I have this one. And then I have this one kind of doing a little melodic thing here. Right? So they're kind of doing a little call and response. So when you have a couple different instruments going on, sometimes it can sound very different, especially for a lot of different synths. And that kind of make it it's kind of doesn't have that continuity that a lot of dubstep producers have. For example, if you listen to really, really talented dubstep producers, they'll use a bunch of different synthesizers and a bunch of different, you know, just elements in general, but they don't sound all over the place. They sound very controlled and very similar. And there's a lot of different ways you can achieve that. You can use the same waveform in Serum, for example, and use the same like wavetable, for example, so that way they're all based on the same wavetable, so they don't sound too all over the place, but it all depends. Another way is to use the OTT. So I'm going to give you an example. So I'm going to turn this off and play the drop with it off. And this is how it sounds. Very different, right? So as you can see, just the waveforms are very different, especially this one's a bit more distorted, a bit more gritty. This one kind of has that like old school, you know, acid tech vibe. So by adding the OTT, what it does is it tries to normalize the frequencies in both of these. So now here's how it sounds with it on. So as you can see, it sounds a lot better, a lot more tight and compact. Now obviously, if you're listening to this, you're probably like, Mark, they sound pretty similar. But in the mix and as everything kind of evolves, the OTT allows however many synths you have to really be normalized, has the term over the top and everything, and kind of have it more normalized and just make things a bit more controlled. Because obviously, if actually my high end on one of my synths is too out of whack, it's gonna mess up my mix. And one of my synths is gonna have a really, really strong high end, and the other one's not. The other one's gonna have a really strong mid, but the other one won't, right? So it'll be back and forth. So this kind of makes it all pretty even. So obviously, I guess demonstrating this a little bit more in depth too, what I can do is I can do a lot. That's what I say. I love this plugin. Easily one of my favorite plugins on this entire series that I have going. So for example, if I have like this, I'll just kind of exaggerate this. So like, so as you can see, I'm boosting that high, and I'm like, okay. And then these three knobs on the right are going to be your gain knobs. So a good example is this. Let's say, and I'm going to use numbers because it's a little bit easier to explain. Let's say right now, and I'm just making this. Let's say I'm at, let's say like 8,000 hertz. I know I'm just making something up. Let's make it low. Let's make it, let's say 5,000. So let's say I'm at 5,000 hertz. And let's say I'm like, okay, you know what? I like this being at 5,000 hertz. But you know what? I want the high end to be boosted a little bit. So I'm going to boost it to 6,000. But I want it to be louder, right? I want that 6,000 hertz range, 6,000 hertz and more range being louder. But if I turn it up, it's gonna be louder in terms of a lot of the other frequencies, right? So what you can do is hush this down, saying, okay, I'm not gonna have it go beyond this certain threshold, but then I can still turn up the high end. So as you can see, if let's say I want this high end to be, I'm gonna make this 0. So I don't have the high end here, but I still want the high end to like, say I want it low. As you see, there's no high end. I can still do this. So I can basically stop the high end from crossing a certain threshold, but I can still turn it up so that therefore it's still not crossing a certain threshold of the high end, but I can still turn up enough to at least normalize it as best as I want to. And that's what's super versatile about it. The same thing as a compressor, where you don't want to go above a certain bit, but you have makeup and all this kind of different things. This is basically what makes it really helpful in terms of not allowing your frequency to be too out of whack and out of control. And it's honestly one of the best plugins out there, like I said. Steve Duda made it. It's completely free, and it does simulate Ableton's OTT compressor. So if you do have Ableton, it's not as necessary, being honest, because obviously, like I said, the preset, it's basically an exact copy of it to an extent. For me, though, even still, I still like this a lot better. And then in addition to, obviously, if you do have FL Studio or Logic or GarageBand or basically any other DAW, then you definitely have to have it. It makes a lot. Anytime you're using any multiband compression, it just makes it a lot easier. Obviously, it's made for OTT, so it's specifically designed for that. But even if you're not using it specifically for that, you can still mess around with it and use it as kind of a makeshift multiband compressor. So, hope you guys like this video. Obviously, definitely wanted to do this one because obviously Xfer Records OTT is incredible, and you really cannot go wrong with it. So, hope you like this, and obviously, like I say in all these videos, if you do have any other VSTs or plugins you would like me to review or test out or demonstrate, definitely post them in the comment section below.